What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. In this video here today, we are going to be talking about what I'm just wondering, could this potentially be the first $1 million piece of original art done by Todd McFarlane? Now, I don't really know because original art can be real tricky sometimes with the pricing, and especially when you look at the history of McFarlane pieces. And so you can see up here, I've got a Batman 423, 9.8, sold recently, just this month, for $1,440 for a direct edition. And in a prior video, I had mentioned that I had thought I had seen that there was the original art for this piece coming up for sale. Someone mentioned in the comments, I believe, that it was on Heritage. I thought it was on Heritage, but I didn't know where it was. And I eventually I came across it when I was looking through some of their upcoming auctions. So they have this upcoming auction right here, and it's got a bunch of really cool pieces in it. And one of them that you see is the original art for Batman 423. That classic McFarlane cover. So this is that piece. It is not officially available for bidding yet. It's supposed to open up around September 29th. The tricky thing with this piece is, in terms of sales price for this, when it has sold previously, because this piece has sold previously about 13 years ago publicly, maybe it's traded hands in between then. It was actually quite a bit less than other McFarlane pieces at the same time. Now, the interesting thing with that is that when you look at, first let's go into that. This is a history of, at least on Heritage. Heritage makes it really easy to search for prior sales of art and that kind of thing. It's a lot trickier on other sites. But at least on Heritage, you can see the most expensive piece of original art ever sold by Todd McFarlane was this Amazing Spider-Man 328. So Spider-Man and Hulk on the cover sold for $657,250. Next closest was very recently, just in June of this year, we had Amazing Spider-Man 311. And to me, like, not nearly as good of a cover as this one. Like, this Amazing Spider-Man 328 is an extremely well-known, loved cover. It's still not worth a lot. It's still only worth, like, I think like $100 or $125 in a 9.8. And we'll check that real quick, but still not worth a lot, but the art worth a lot more. And I don't know, like, this piece just doesn't speak to me nearly as much. I mean, for 456,000, but this one's super cool. Then you've got the X-Force cover, original art, 408,000. This one from back in 2012. I mean, one of the most famous covers ever done by McFarlane. Spider-Man #1 going for 358,000. You keep going down here, and you start to see like some prices that you would think popularity of the book, overall value of the book, would have a bigger impact on the price of the original art, or maybe like the significance of the book, but not so much. Like, they're related. It's like kind of like they rhyme, but there isn't this direct correlation, at least maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I have no idea how that's going to play out today in this current art market where it's just gotten pretty bananas. And so you can see here, like in 2014, 2 years after this one sold, you had Amazing Spider-Man 300, one of the most important books of all time, the most homaged book of all time, sold for 140,000. Now, the complexity of this cover is nothing compared to Amazing Spider-Man 328. And that's one of the things that McFarlane is really well known for, is these extremely detailed pages and covers. I mean, this one, I believe almost the entire cover for this is just like paste ups, which are like fake after the fact, put together things to make it look like the cover. And so, there's not a lot really like hand drawn on ASM 300 by McFarlane versus this, where there's just a huge amount of work and detail, and you can just tell like level of effort put into this piece. So I can kind of get that, but you would still think that like Amazing Spider-Man 300, like first full appearance of Venom, like one of the most popular books of all time, I think it's the most graded book of all time, would have a bigger price just for its significance. And then we go down to Batman 423. You can see it that same time in 2012. The same, somebody must have had like, I don't know, maybe it was McFarlane, I don't know, but somebody must have had a pretty significant collection they sold right around 2012 of McFarlane pieces, because there's a lot of pieces around that period. But we have Batman 423 sold for just $71,700. And I say just, I realize that's a lot of money, but in today's art market, that is not a lot of money. And you can see there are some little differences with this one that you can see there was this, there's like the little McFarlane signature down here. And this is still, I believe, part of this one, but you can see they've got the kind of like the reverse here. And so they don't show it in an image anywhere, but I believe they both come together. Like I remember seeing an interview with somebody who had originally owned this. I don't know if it's this person or if it traded hands since then, where they met McFarlane at like New York Comic Con, and they actually had the little cutout inside the bag with it. But yeah, so it's the same piece, but that's why it looks a little bit different there. But I've just been thinking about this one because, to me, in recent memory, right? Like when you're looking at the pieces that have sold recently, like this is not an important piece. Amazing Spider-Man 311, like this is not a significant, important cover. X-Force 16 or Spider-Man 16 X-Force cover, not a significant, important cover. Like the big, significant, important covers haven't sold for over a decade. You know, we've got Amazing Spider-Man 300, Batman 423, which at this time was not significant. Like if we look at Batman 423, look at a 9.8. In 2012, that book was $100. Like $100 in 2012. Roughly the same price as Amazing Spider-Man 328 and a 9.8. But now it's worth like $1,600. And let's look at that Amazing Spider-Man 328. So Amazing Spider-Man 328 today in a 9.8 is, yeah, $100. You know, back in 2012, it was $50. So, I mean, yeah, like it was roughly the same price point in 2012 as it is today. Versus Batman 423, which has gone up by almost 15 to 20x. And so that's one of the questions that I'd like to hear commenters, you know, viewers' opinions on this cover. Like it's clearly a much simpler cover. I've had multiple people comment that this, according to McFarlane, this is actually one of the quickest covers he's ever drawn. But ultimately, it is one of the most well-known and collected covers today that he has ever drawn. I mean, you've got Batman, who's, you know, just a beloved character. And then you've got McFarlane, who is arguably the most popular living artist, comic cover artist. I mean, you could make some arguments for a couple other people like Frank Miller or Jim Lee. But McFarlane, like there is clearly a huge desire for his demand for his work. I mean, just looking at you've got like this cover, like Amazing Spider-Man 311 selling for almost $500,000. You look at pages that have sold recently, like this page here, interior page, which to me, like, I know there was some criticism about this one. People felt like there's too much white space for selling as much as it did. This page is awesome. Like to me, like Spider-Man looks awesome on that page. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think that is a super, super cool page, but $200,000 for an interior page to Spider-Man 11. You know, art is one of those, it's a tricky thing. You know, it's like, it's really in the eye of the beholder on what someone wants to pay for it. But you'd still expect significance of the piece, overall desirability of like the actual comic or importance of the comic to play a role there. And so like when I remember when I saw the video of that person interviewing or meeting with McFarlane with this piece at New York Comic Con, and he's just like walking around with this, my immediate thought was like, that's like $1 million. And so, and now that was peak comic boom, but in reality, art has gotten more expensive since then. And so my initial thought was that's $1 million, but that was before I had really been looking into art as much as I do now. And so now I'm thinking it's got to be at least 500,000. But it's just when I look at this piece selling for 657,000 13 years ago. And yes, it is an awesome cover, and it shows like the skill he has and everything, like just the level of detail. But then the significance of like Amazing Spider-Man 300, Batman 423 in terms of collectability. Like, what would these pieces sell for today, despite being much more simple? And I think it's got to break $500,000. And I would not be surprised if it goes over $1 million, despite the fact that it is relatively simple compared to some of his other work. But, let me know in the comments. What do you think? What do you think that this Batman original art is ultimately going to sell for? I mean, I'm always hoping for big numbers. I love seeing big numbers in these, in these auctions and these sales. And so I'd love to see this thing break $1 million. Man, I don't know. But the art market is so different today than it was in 2012 that I could see some frenzied bidding for this piece. But I have to think it's going to break $500,000. I have to. And then we'll see if it gets up to that $1 million mark. Now, just one other thing I wanted to talk about here was that because we have this, this really cool auction coming up, I just thought I would show a couple of the other pieces that are coming up for sale that, people might be interested in. There's some crazy stuff in this auction. Look at this. Hit Comics number 5. Now, I've said it a number of times, I'm not a Lou fan guy. I just tend to not like his stuff. But I do think Hit Comics number 5 is pretty cool. I like the black background and everything. It looks cool. And if you look up Hit Comics number 5, we just had, I think it was the Mile High copy sell. And it's one of those things where it's always interesting to see what a high grade of the comic sells for versus the original art. You can see a high grade of the comic sold for $90,000. Not just a high grade, the highest grade. Sold for $90,000 in September. So what is the original art for this going to sell for? You never see like Lou Fine stuff come up for sale. So if you look at Heritage, there have been a couple other covers from Lou Fine that have sold. You can see here, there's this one, Hit Comics number 6, sold for $65,000 back in 2016. National Comics number 11 sold for $55,000, but they're like $50,000 to $60,000. But like these aren't the same significance. And that's a pretty cool one, $50,000, but that's 2008. But aren't the same significance in terms of collectability as Hit Comics number 5. But I don't know. I don't know if the collector market for this is much smaller. So it depends like how much money is out there that's actually going to compete to go for this. Like I would expect it's going to break 200,000. Is it a $500,000 piece? Maybe. I mean, when you look at the 9.6 Mile High copy going for 90,000, but it's the type of thing that it's just be really interesting to see what's out there. Cause you don't really know for sure the people that have the deep pockets, if they are willing to spend that on this. And I don't know, it'll be really interesting to see. There's some other cool stuff. Like we've got a Bob Kane page, Bob Kane, Jerry Robinson, George Russo's page from Batman 13. Pretty cool piece. You don't see stuff like this, like Golden Age pages, Golden Age covers from significant pieces. Then we've got some stuff that there just doesn't seem to be any sales history for this type of stuff. So we've got Master Comics number 27, Raboy cover, Master Comics 22, Raboy cover, and then we've got Mary Marvel number 5, just a very popular Jack Binder cover. Now the interesting things with these is that some of these, like, to me, like the big draw on these covers is the inking, like the coloring. And so like this is what this cover actually looks like. And it's just such a beautiful cover. But when you don't have that coloring, it takes something away from it. And so you just kind of wonder like what the impact is going to be on those prices. But these ones, there's just almost zero sales history for these. So I'm just really interested to see what they ultimately end up going for. You don't see covers done by Mac Raboy sell ever, especially not extremely popular covers. Like, I mean, this one of the most popular covers, especially for Captain Marvel Jr. from that era. And then this one, you've got a World War II cover where, you know, he's destroying this Japanese aircraft carrier. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting auction to watch. But again, let me know in the comments. What do you think? I mean, hey, if you're interested in these, what do you think these will go for? But especially, I'm really interested to see what people think the Batman 423 original art is going to go for, because I mean, yeah, it's a different market now, and I would love to know if this, you know, being a simpler piece, will compete with the high level of detail that goes into you know, some of his other work that he's done. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell, and I will see you on the next one.